Hello, students. Welcome to Social Problems, Chapter 7, Crime, Violence, and Criminal Justice. In this chapter, we're going to be talking about criminology terms and categories. We'll take a look at the criminal justice system, how crimes are tracked, and also some various theories to explain crime and deviance. Crime is a violation of a law. We have a difference between what's known as misdemeanors and also felonies. Misdemeanors are going to be a less serious crimes, including petty theft, public intoxication, minor drug possessions. Typically, fines or probation is going to be more likely. If it becomes a habitual offense, there actually may be some prison time, but it's usually less than 1 year. Felonies are much more serious crimes, including murder, rape, burglary, kidnapping, arson, intentionally setting fire to a home or a business. And usually when it comes to felonies, since they are more serious crimes, prison time is usually more than 1 year. If we take a look at crime categories, they are usually categorized in two predominant categories: violent crimes versus property crimes. Violent crimes are crimes against people. They make up around 20% of all crimes. Example of violent crimes would be murder, rape, and robbery. The reason that robbery is a violent crime because it's typically an altercation between one person and another with a lethal weapon such as a gun or a knife. Assault is the most common type of violent crime. Typically, this is under the influence of some sort of drugs or alcohol. It could be domestic violence or it could be some sort of fight. Violent crimes have been declining for the last several decades. Property crimes have also been declining for several decades. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So property crimes will be crimes against property. They're usually motivated by money or greed. Burglary, arson. If greed is the intention when it comes to arson, they may set fire to a home or a place of business in order to get the insurance money. Motor vehicle theft, in order to resell it, usually motivated by money. Larceny theft is the most common type of property crime. An example of larceny theft would be shoplifting, purse snatching, pickpocket. Property crimes and violent crimes have both been steadily declining for the last couple of decades. Now, if we take a look at the difference between what's known as blue collar and white collar crimes, usually depending upon the types of crimes that people commit is usually associated with their socioeconomic status, their status in society, their education level, how much money they have, and their status will often influence the types of crimes that they may be motivated to move towards. Blue collar crimes, these are usually committed by people of a lower socioeconomic status, lower educated. They may be struggling in poverty. They may have various types of addictions, could be gambling addictions, alcohol addictions, could be drug addictions. So some example of blue collar crimes are robbery, burglary, and shoplifting. These types of crimes are typically more out in the public view. There are web cameras everywhere. Surveillance and security cameras. So since they are more in the public view, they're also more likely to get caught and they're more likely to serve prison time. Now, also because they have a lower socioeconomic status, they may not be able to afford a very good attorney. So they may have a public defender. And it does matter what kind of lawyer that you have. If you have a really good lawyer, it can mean the difference between going to prison and not going to prison. White collar crimes, these are going to be either individuals or companies or organizations with a high socioeconomic status. They have money, they have power, they have connections. And they are usually motivated not so much by crimes that would be done out in public, but it would be really behind the scenes, much less public and much more hidden. For example, a company that is embezzling its investors' money, stealing from its investors, insider trading with the stock market, identity theft. These are all examples of things that can be done behind closed doors and behind a screen. They're less likely to get caught. They're less likely to go to prison. They typically can afford the best lawyers that money can buy. And they also have the advantage of having money, so they could actually settle out of court. And sometimes writing a check can make everything go away. So there is a level of injustice or inequality when it comes to our judicial system between those who have money and status connections and those who do not. Organized crimes. Organized crimes are going to be any group of people that are involved in illegal or illicit businesses, motivated by profit and making money. Drug cartels, mafia families, street gangs, biker gangs like the Hells Angels that are involved in methamphetamines, the selling, the manufacture and distribution of methamphetamines. Some other examples of these crimes would be human trafficking, selling of illegal drugs and weapons, armed robbery, counterfeiting, prostitution, loan sharking, giving out loans but putting very high interest rates in order to make money, money laundering, and also protection payments, paying off people in positions of power, political power, police, in order to protect themselves. Historically, if we're taking a look at organized crime, one thing we need to take a look at is prohibition. This was only around for about 13 years, and this was a time period where alcohol was prohibited from being sold. The idea behind prohibition was good. The idea is that if we can get rid of alcohol, then we can reduce domestic violence. We can reduce the issue of people of calling into work and not going into work. If we get this addictive substance out of society, then maybe our families will come together and we'll be a more productive society. That was the idea. However, people still wanted their alcohol. So the demand was still there. So since it was no longer being sold legally, it created a black market. And the black market increased organized crime. Crime rates went up. We had bootlegging or smuggling of alcohol in order to sell it. And there was a massive loss of revenue of $11 billion. Since alcohol was no longer being legally sold, it was no longer being legally taxed. So the issue of alcoholism was still a problem within the family. It was still a problem within the workplace. It increased crime and it decreased tax revenue. Because of this, after 13 years, it was decided it's just not worth it. So prohibition went away in 1933, and we haven't had it since. Another example of crimes would be hate crimes. These are crimes that are motivated, and certain victims are targeted because of the color of their skin, their religion, their ethnicity, their nationality, their sexual orientation, their gender identity, their disability. Now, even though overall violent crimes and property crimes are going down, hate crimes specifically are on the rise, and they've been rising for the last couple of years. Mostly motivated by race. That's the number one reason for hate crimes. People are being targeted based on their race and their ethnicity. Now, if we're looking specifically and only at religious categories, the highest percentage of those that are being targeted are going to be Jewish individuals, Jewish churches. But at the same time, we've also seen a rise of hate crimes towards Muslim churches as well. But the highest is among Jewish churches. So let's take a look at our criminal justice system. Here in the United States, we have what's called due process. Criminal justice system operates within the bounds of the law, and people are being presumed innocent until proven guilty. There's a lot of places around the world that do not have this due process. I served in the military. I spent some time in Central and South America. There's a lot of places around the world that if you are presumed to be guilty, then you are kind of in a situation where you have to turn around and prove your innocence. It's just reversed. Police officers, we have around 600,000 full-time police officers, but with a population of 330 plus million Americans, that's a very small fraction. Around 97% of all criminal cases are settled through a plea bargain, where individuals will usually plead guilty to a lesser charge in order to possibly get less time in prison. This can move things along through the court system much more smoothly and much more quickly, but at the same time, there are innocent people out there that are terrified for it to go into trial, and they decide, you know what, I'm going to plead guilty to a lesser charge. So we do have innocent people that are in prison because of this. Something that's really important is the ability to track crime. And whenever we're dealing with any type of social problem, we have to be able to track the trends. So when it comes to sociologists and criminologists, law enforcement, FBI, there are two main ways that we're able to track crime rates here in the United States. The first one is called the Uniform Crime Report. And this is whenever local and state law enforcement, they collect the reported crimes that they've had to deal with throughout the year, and they send all of that information to the FBI. The FBI puts an annual crime report together that categorizes violent crimes versus property crimes that have been reported and dealt with. And so because of that, we're able to take a look at the trends and what direction that those two main categories are going, but also more specifically, we can take a look from state to state, county to county, and city to city to actually see what types of crimes are being committed in certain areas, and also the trajectory. Are they going up or are they going down? If you take a look at that link there, open that up, it gives you a wealth of information about crime statistics. The second one is called the National Crime Victimization Survey. This is a survey that is sent out to a sample of the American population each year, and it will ask them questions. Have you been a victim of a crime? What type of crime was it? And also, did you report it or not? One of the benefits of the National Crime Victimization Survey is that it'll give us a snapshot and an idea of certain crimes in areas that are not being reported, which is important because the Uniform Crime Report does not do that. So we're able to see both reported and unreported crimes of people who've been victims of crimes. Take a look at this chart here. It goes back to 1990. And we can see that overall violent crimes in the U.S. have been steadily going down. Same thing goes for property crimes. They've been steadily going down. You may be asking yourself, well, why is that happening? Well, if you take a look at the 24-hour news cycle, a lot of it's very negative because that's what gets people viewing it. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily accurate in where the trend is going. So there's a few reasons why property crimes and violent crimes are going down. Number one, we live in a surveillance society. There are webcams everywhere, Ring doorbells, security cameras everywhere. Almost every one of us has a cell phone that can hit record at any time. And so since we live in a surveillance society, we are more aware of that and more cautious. It's a lot harder to get away with things than it was a long time ago. That's number one. Number two, we have more police officers on the streets than ever before. Number three, we have three strikes you're outlaws. A lot of states have these three strikes you're outlaws, where if you commit three serious felonies, you may spend the rest of your life in prison. That does overpopulate our prison, but at the same time, it does have a direct effect on crime rates that are occurring in the U.S. each year. There are a lot of different perspectives when it comes to punishing people who commit crimes. The reason it's important to understand this is because the perception is the way that they should be dealt with will often have a direct effect on how we treat incarcerated people, whether they are there to be punished or whether they are there to be rehabilitated and brought back into society better. Number one is retribution, the idea that criminals should suffer. If they're committing crimes, they should go to prison, they should suffer. Number two, which goes along with retribution, that harsh punishments will deter crime. If there's a severe, very harsh punishment, that people are going to spend a long time in prison, then maybe people will second guess committing those crimes. The third one is societal protection, the idea that people who are committing crimes need to be incarcerated. They need to spend their time in prison away from law-abiding citizens. And lastly is rehabilitation, which a lot of prisons today are trying to move towards, to rehabilitate offenders, to get them job ready, counseling, drug or alcohol addiction counseling, to try to get them out of the system and to be productive members of society. So depending upon the viewpoint of that prison, their viewpoint and their approach may be punishment or it could be rehabilitation. It just depends on what their perspective is. Let's take a look at some various social theories of crime and deviance. Strain theory. This is a micro level theory, and this states that whenever people are under duress, they're under strain, that they may act out because of that strain or stressors. If they are experiencing homelessness or poverty, they may go to extremes in order to survive. Shoplifting, groceries, prostitution, possibly stripping, especially if there are any type of addictions, drug addictions, alcohol addictions. A lot of people who are struggling with addiction will go to far extremes to deal with that addiction. And that is a very serious issue in our prison system. A lot of people who are career criminals, they have serious drug addictions that need to be addressed. The second one is called cultural transmission theory. And this theory states that whenever a newcomer goes into a particular group, could be a street gang, could be a biker gang, it could be a religious cult. Since you are the newcomer, if you want to be part of us, if you want to do what we do, if you want to be with us, then you got to take on the values that we have as a street gang or a biker gang or the mafia or a religious cult. You got to take on those values. If we're involved in deviant behavior or criminal behavior, then you know what, if you want to be part of us, you got to do the same thing. And you often have to prove yourself. Among biker gangs, you may be what's called a prospect or a pledge. You have to prove yourself. This is also quite common in street gangs. Within street gangs, you have to commit some sort of crime against a rival gang in order to be accepted within that gang. So this type of behavior is conditioned and learned. The third one is called differential association theory. This has to do with peer group influence. And what this states is that the people that we're spending a lot of time with and that we're emotionally connected to can have a positive or negative influence on our behavior. So if we're spending a lot of time around people that are involved in criminal behavior and we're emotionally close to them, they're going to start affecting us, our perception, the way we view things, and also our actions if we're hanging out with them. But it also goes the other way. If you're hanging around a group of people that does not value crime, does not value deviance, they're trying to move their lives forward in a positive way, and you're spending your time with them, that's going to change your perception and also change your actions, because you're spending time with them to go down a positive road and not a road of crime. The last one is called labeling theory. Labeling theory has to do with the labels that we attach to ourselves and how they can influence our perception, our feelings, and our actions. So if somebody is a career criminal and they're involved in crimes and they take on the label of the gang and it's something that they're proud of, well, it's going to stick to them. And when they get out of prison, they're probably going to go back to the same old ways. And they're going to keep coming back to prison over and over again. It's called recidivism, in and out, in and out. Same thing goes for children. If a child is told that they're a bad kid or they're a bully or they're no good, once they start believing that, they may actually start acting it out. So we have to be careful. What are we telling ourselves? Career criminals, the moment they start rejecting the gang and the lifestyle, the label falls off. And when the label falls off and they no longer value the gang life or the prison life, that's when their attitude starts changing, their perception starts changing, and their actions start changing. So our final thought for this chapter: sociology and criminology both research and track crime statistics to better understand criminal trends on the state, regional, and national level, so on the macro level. But also on the micro level, the emotional, psychological, and financial effects of crimes on individuals and their families are also evaluated as well.